All right, so let's talk about unemployment. I think that just came out this morning, which is a heavy indicator that impacts mortgage rates. So, what was it? What happened? And then tell us about how that affected rates.
Yeah. So, when we talk about what the Fed's doing and, we're like, okay, so now it's data driven, right? So before they were just going to hike rates, the language was like, we were going to continue to tighten monetary policy until we can't squeeze any more out of the rag, right? So now we've got like banks, which will be interesting. I think now that the debt ceiling is done, I think we're going to see more of these regional banks hit the news cycles with some more of these regional banks
Sure.
going under, which is a bummer because that is all that's where all your commercial and business lending comes from. And we both know like the commercial real estate market is kind of interesting right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the unemployment report is one that we watch heavily because we've done a lot with inflation. Like the inflation has come down significantly, and we're starting to see some of these pricing measures ease things and all this. So these things are all working. But the one stubborn part of inflation that's really driving inflation is the jobs. Like we are still creating jobs at record levels. So today, economists were expecting we'd create 190,000 jobs, which is kind of funny because private payrolls came out 2 days ago and they came in at like 270,000 jobs, but they
Crazy.
thought that the Bureau of Labor and Statistics was like, well, we're going to guess it's 190,000. So came back today at 339,000, which would normally, being that out of whack, would just destroy the bond market for the day. And it really, it impacts, it hasn't been great. We've probably lost like an 1/8 to 1/4% maybe in mortgage rates. But we saw the actual unemployment rate tick up. So we went from 3.4% unemployment rate to a 3.7, which comes from a different survey. It comes from like a non-government data driven survey. It comes from what we call a household survey. So, there's kind of like, I can't think of the word right now. Like competing data, right? Like one of them is
Right.
saying one thing and the other one is saying another. And so again, that's why the bond market hasn't really reacted that strongly to it. The other part of that we look at really closely are hours worked. So the hours worked decreased by 0.1%, which doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but you're talking about 0.1% of every job in America was decreased
Crazy.
by
Yeah.
that. And then we also look really closely at wages. And so wages, they stayed within and just a hair below what expectations were for wage growth. So we're seeing wage growth year over year, like 4.4%. And we want to get inflation down to 2%. And the reason that we look at that so closely is that inflation is between like, we'll call like 4.5% and 5.5%. However, which report you're looking at. Well, if wages are growing at the same rate, guess what's not a problem?
Hmm.
Inflation.
Yeah.
Like if wage
Right.
growth and inflation go at the same
Right.
rate, then who cares? Like,
Yeah.
forget it. Like I'm just gonna keep buying stuff,
That's a great
And
point.
so, and what the Fed's trying to do is they're saying like they're in this pickle, right? Like they don't want to play. If you remember that game where it's like the tower and you put a Kleenex on it and you had to set ice cubes on there until they
Oh
fell
yeah.
through, So and
Don't
you
break
didn't.
the ice.
Yeah, is that what it was called? Yeah. So what a great name. So you're trying to figure out like how you can put all these ice cubes on here without falling through that. And that's what the Fed's doing. Like they've got to get companies to spend less money, but they don't want people to stop getting jobs. They want the unemployment number to go up, but they want to do it very slowly. And at the same time, they're doing all these things, but people just keep hiring, and so that's been really the kind of the tricky part of tackling inflation right now is the last piece. We're starting to see everything else go our way.
Right. So looking ahead, what are the what's coming in the rest of June that will continue to drive this story of mortgage rates?
So next week we'll have CPI. Is it next week or the week after? It might be the week after. So CPI, so Consumer Price Index, is a really big one that we look at. We also are going to get Producer Price Index, which is the price that companies pay for the stuff that we buy, which is kind of like, that's like the beginning of inflation. That's like where it starts to hit our pockets. So we'll be watching for that. And then we have a Fed meeting later this month as well, which I think, I could be wrong, is on the 17th. I don't have my calendar in front of me for that. But a lot of them right now, it's kind of interesting. We've been talking about raising, pausing, cutting, and you see all these things. And now there's a new term that's been introduced this week, and because they're saying that, okay, so they've been raising rates, and this meeting they're thinking that they're not going to raise rates. Like, so there's a good portion of these Wall Street bettors that bet on they're going to raise whatever they're going to do at the rate. And a lot of the pundits are saying that they're not going to raise rates this time. So the Fed came out and said, yeah, we may not raise rates, but this is not a pause. This is a skip. So we've added another layer to this. So that's kind of what the markets are looking at. And I think that the consumer pricing, like this unemployment report, definitely lends itself to more raising rates. But I also think that as we see some of the other inflation data, because of what we've seen for rents and housing costs and stuff like that are coming down, I think that CPI and some of those inflation reports should probably push us more in the direction of like the skip or the pause position on rates later this month.
Steve, we appreciate you. Thank you for all the insights. Tons of nuggets that you dropped on today's episode. So thank you for that.
All right, you got it, man. Have a good one.